Get some sugar.
All right, we're going to
Oh, no, nobody.
call this meeting to order. And I'm going to turn my phone off. It's a good instructional tool, so you all know that this should be done. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting, and I would ask for Adam to do a roll call of the members, please.
Chair Penner.
Present.
Mr. Kernan is absent today. Mr. Powers.
Present.
Mr. Groudon.
Here.
Mr. Dean.
Present.
Ms. Perez.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Ortolo.
Here.
Mr. Bejarano should
He
be.
is here. He should be back in the room any minute.
Oh, we saw the line he was in Starbucks. I should have been kinder and waited to start this meeting.
Continue. Mr. Budnick is also absent today. Mr. Steinhardt. Here. And Ms. Torno.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, and the record should reflect that it is an excused absence by the Scotts, both Kernan and Budnick. And I'd like to extend a debt of gratitude to Sheriff Groudon, who traveled today. And it's a long trip. He needs to be back for his son's graduation this afternoon. So if he dashes out, it's an excused dash also. So thank you for making the trip for us. Chief Bejarano.
Excellent.
People were talking about you when you were gone. but I'm
Talking
so
about
glad
me.
you're
My
here.
apologies. I was right outside listening to you.
Yeah, the whole thing. You could have live streamed it from Starbucks. I'd like to begin the meeting by inviting Maria Rodriguez-Rieger to come forward to the podium. Maria. As all of you know, Maria has been the board secretary for the last 5 years, and through a positive personnel action, Maria's been promoted. She has relinquished those duties to Adam, and we want to take an opportunity today to thank and show our appreciation to Maria for all the work she's done with each of us. And I liken containing this body and doing all the travel and making sure the board meetings come together and the notebooks and all the many, many things she does to herding ants. And I can tell you from my own personal perspective, I know that Maria has worked very long hours, is incredibly diligent, is stunningly loyal, and has a passion for the work she does. She is an individual who has been with the board since 1998 in many different capacities. And I can tell you that I've been with the board maybe 10 years now, from the days of CSSA, and she has shepherded me graciously every step of the way. And that in itself is not an easy job. The board members today would like to show their appreciation to you, Maria, by providing you with a plaque that commemorates your service. And the plaque reads, to Maria Rieger, your loyal service as a board secretary has played an integral role in our success. Thank you for your dedication. From the Board of State and Community Corrections. And I'd like to ask, I'll come to you, Maria, because Maria's shy, unlike myself. I actually said, do you want to say something? And she goes, well, I'll just have to see how it feels, Linda. I totally outed her. Now, if it doesn't feel good, everybody knows. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you. Here you go. You take this. Maria's husband. Thank you. Ted. Oh, right under here.
Oh, look, Linda got in the picture. Shocking.
The record reflects that Sheriff Dean's out of order again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before you speak, Maria, we'd like to make you nervous just a tad longer. I think Katie would like to.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. And just to Maria personally, Maria was instrumental in my onboarding here at the BSCC, answered every question that I could come up with. But what I really want to recognize in Maria is how perceptive she is about the people in our organization. And I will always remember a particularly rough day for me. And Maria was just a lovely shoulder of understanding and sympathy for me when I needed it. And that really means a lot. You know, coming from me in my role, for you to say, I know you're having a rough day and I hope you're okay. I appreciate you, Maria. Thank you.
And I'm going to let the rest of the board speak if they'd like, but Maria, are you feeling it? Or I hope you're feeling a few things. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, I had to write it down because it was my pleasure to serve the board, and I had much respect for you and your profession. Thank you for dedicating your lives to improving the quality of law enforcement and safety for those of us who reside and visit the state of California.
Thank you.
And you put in so many long hours yourselves, and I just can't thank you enough for all the work that you do and the dedication that goes into your dedication.
Thank you. I think there are board members that want to say more. And yet again, you made it about us and not you, and I should learn that trait, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Penner. You know, people act differently around me than they do around my staff. I've learned this through the years. And so I always ask my staff about a person, what they think about this person, because I find that interactions are often different, and I have to be mindful of that. And my staff is crazy about you. They love you, think you are such a consummate professional, always clear, always responsive, and just a very pleasant person to be in this, you know, grand experiment with. And I so appreciate your professionalism, the respect you've always given to my chief of staff that thinks the world of you. No offense to Adam, of course, but it's very sad to not be working with you. I look forward to building that, of course. And so it's really remarkable, the respect and that you give to everybody in this process, regardless of what role they play. I think that says a lot about you. It says just about everything I need to know about a person usually, but you've done a really phenomenal job, and your consistency and professionalism are noted and very incredibly appreciated. So best of luck to you in the next role. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
I'll just say something as one of the senior members now, long-termers. It's hard to imagine BSCC without you, Maria, and you've always been incredibly supportive. And I remember early on, my surprise on joining the board of being called Mr. Steinhardt, because people called me some other things. So she's always been so terribly courteous in the dealings with me and with others. So thank you very much, Maria.
Yeah, I just want to thank Maria. I've been on the board like I think around 7 years or so, but being from a small mountain town, I didn't know a lot about travel. But Maria, I probably asked her some dumb questions over the years, but she's always very helpful, and I appreciate her help over those years, and I want to congratulate her on her promotion. Thanks, Maria.
I'd like to also congratulate Maria on the well-deserved promotion. And going back to when I first joined the board, it was so easy to make that transition with the prompt response to any inquiries, the travel arrangements, just an amazing support for all the board members. So thank you again, Maria. Good luck.
And also, congratulations, Maria. You were always very friendly with me, and at the transition of coming to the BSCC and what am I getting into, and you just made it so much easier for me with all my questions and my neediness. So thank you so much.
And to piggyback on what Sheriff Brown said, I probably asked the same dumb questions repeatedly, and you were always pleasant. I never felt like I was putting you out or that you didn't have time, and I've always appreciated that. Just so accommodating. So thank you.
If I might invite the board to come forward and take a picture with Maria and her plaque and the entire board, I think that would mean a great deal to her. And Katie, that includes you. But
Thanks.
It's a board of supervisors moment, you know that.
Oh, you're awful. I'm not from here.
You don't have to step. So protective.
Let's see, where should it, let me see, sorry.
Maybe I don't dirt on the front of your people.
Please try to hide that big smudge off of this jacket.
That's so big.
Did I give it to her? No. Yeah, thank you, Maria.
Oh, it isn't.
What is that? What is all of it? Very professional.
Sorry, Linda.
Just for the record, I was cleaning my left hand.
Oh my gosh.
As we return to the agenda, I'd like to announce that Aaron McGuire, counsel for the BSCC, is present and move, are we doing a closed session? I didn't get a final on that.
No, I don't think a closed session would be necessary.
All right. Moving now to the chair's report, I can simply say that after many, many years of handing out construction money across the state of California as the chair of this board, I'm pleased to tell you that over the last quarter, I've been to an open house in Kings County of their 1022 facility, an AB 900 dedication in Kern County, and another 1022 facility in Santa Cruz County. And it is remarkable to see these things after staff does all the hard work and all the heavy lifting. I get up and say thank you like I did it, which is a talent in itself. But it is impressive to see these come to fruition across the state after many years of effort. I also spent some time in Chicago representing California for the juvenile justice reforms that have occurred in our state. Admittedly, this was a summit which was cross branches, so there were legislators, judges, and then criminal justice practitioners. California is looked at, I think it was favorably. It could have been odd, but at any rate, it was a really, really a great opportunity to talk about what we've done in terms of the reforms and the reduction in juvenile crime detention across our state and the services that we provide. So I was really proud to do that on behalf of the board. With that said, we always like Katie's director's report. She did mention to me that it was only 3 pages double spaced. And I think Tracy, our communications director, has had a great deal to do with the size and depth of these reports in not necessarily a positive way.
When the cool thing is, I can read quickly.
Yeah.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Maria, that was a really lovely ceremony. I'm really happy we were able to do that. I do have several updates for you as part of my ED report. First, on strategic planning, we have begun the internal staff level planning process toward implementation and have formed a number of work groups around the goals that this board has identified. We will be reaching out to stakeholders and subject matter experts and other interested parties along the way. I just want you to know that a whole lot of good internal planning work is going on, and we will continue to keep you informed of progress as we meet different milestones. Related to the residential substance abuse and treatment application and grant and program, you'll hear a report from Colleen Stoner later today on some recommended awards for this current round of funding. We're also in the process of applying for the 2018 award. That award amount is not yet known. And I wanted to give you some information in addition about a workshop that took place here in our office on Tuesday and Thursday of this week. The current grantees for RSAT, and that's Kern, Riverside, Sacramento, and Tulare counties. They are the current grantees under the Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Program, which Sheriff Browden knows a great deal about. As part of the process this time, our staff had extensive training in the Corrections Practices Checklist, which I think many of you are familiar with. It's an evidence-based tool that's very, very intensive in nature. It's an assessment that examines the fidelity by which programs are implemented. The really cool thing is that these 4 programs had basically an initial assessment 4 years ago, and then a follow-up assessment that was just recently completed. Huge kudos go out to a whole bunch of our BSCC team, but I really want to name in particular Colleen Stoner and Helene Zentner. The result of that second round of the assessments, when you're comparing the prior and current practices with all of the literature on effective practices and so on, all 4 of these projects made immense improvements. And so I was able to spend a little bit of time at the workshop earlier in the week, and the enthusiasm and excitement around all of this was really palpable. So that's some great work, and I'm thrilled about it. Our STC team is beginning their compliance monitoring cycle. So this means from July through September, STC field reps will be visiting every sheriff's office, probation department, and participating police department to review training records and determine compliance with the training requirements. We'll bring you that update at our board meeting in November. We are working on the 6th annual Community Corrections Partnership Legislative Report, the CCP report, that will be released in July. I want to give you a few additional updates on the status of some of our grants that are coming to an end soon. The Strengthening Law Enforcement and Community Relations Grant and the MIOCR grant, Mentally Ill Offender Crime Reduction Grant, both end on June 30th of this year. We have a statutory requirement in MIOCR to provide a final legislative report, and that will be released in December of this year. I want to just jump ahead to a couple of the information items. We have a written report in the binder on legislation. If there are any questions on that, I'd be happy to take them. And then in addition, I wanted to highlight information item 5 in your binders. You'll see there a summary report on the CalGRIP grant, which has just concluded. We received, well, it ended in 2017, December of 17, and we received final evaluation reports from the 19 grantees. There are short summaries in your binder of those evaluation reports, and then there's a link to the reports in full. The giant binder right there between Sheriff Browden and Linda is the entirety of all those reports. Some really, really impressive findings on different measures of success, including from Los Angeles, where 98% of participants remained enrolled in school, those who are participating in the CalGRIP program, and in Fresno, which saw a 41% decrease in felony arrests in targeted areas. So just wanted to make you aware that those reports are available. And we wanted to, as a matter of practice, come back to the board as a grant wraps up, recognizing that when that grant started, this one went from 2015 to 17, not all the board members who are here today would have been part of that approving process. And we just want you to see what's happening with our grants. Also, kudos to Adam, who was instrumental in providing these short summary paragraphs. Finally, I don't know if this is good news or bad news or the same news, but we do need to have a board meeting on July 12th. We will be able to accommodate a telephonic meeting. So as you know, under the Bagley-Keene Act, we need to post the address and public location of where each and every board member will be. And if you should be taking it from your office or some other location, you need to make your location accessible to the public if they should wish to join. So Adam will work with you and your staff closely to get those addresses. We need all that information posted 10 days in advance of the July 12th meetings. And this will be a location right here at the BSCC. Linda and I will be meeting with the probation chief, so we'll be in Southern California, but our other members of our team will be right here in this room, and we can accommodate multiple locations, as you know. We know we have some issues related to delegating authority for my signature to various bond documents, so that's kind of an administrative issue that's time sensitive. And if there's anything in the state budget, we don't yet know what may or may not be in the state budget, but if we should need to take action on anything promptly following that, that's another reason the July meeting is important to keep on calendar.
So just a question about that. Are
Sure.
we going to utilize the chiefs meeting as a hub?
Yes.
As well as the BSCC, so if you were close to
Riverside
County, you could join us there.
Say the word. Say
Yeah,
Palm
you could join us there. You're gonna be there anyway, right? Yeah. And I
Chief Bertola and Chief Brown.
Yeah.
120 degrees.
Oh. Well, and yet again, another cheery update from Jerry Powers. Yes. Yes, we know, we promised to have a meeting inside. So, but,
For what it's worth for a quorum, I'll be in an airplane, so I won't even be able to.
oh, okay.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, Sheriff.
All right, thank you. Okay, so you can make arrangements accordingly if you can actually be there in person.
And that's my report, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Comment?
Yes,
I just want to say I really appreciated the program summaries for the CalGRIP program. I thought were very well done, and it provided a much higher resolution picture of what goes on with that grant. And you didn't, I guess, mention that there is another cycle, renewal funding for CalVIP.
That's
So
right.
that will probably happen here again. And the only thing that I had sort of hoped for, you cited some of the good results that were reported, but the outcome measures are scattered all over the map and inconsistent. And I'm just hoping that we can kind of crank that and even other grants with better outcome data, better formatted in the future.
Looking
I'm
for more
working on it.
consistency, Mr. Steiner, is that kind of the nature of your
Well, I think
suggestion?
it relates to a lot of work we're doing on the juvenile justice side with the promise, not much action yet, to try to revitalize the juvenile detention profile survey here on facilities. So there's work to be done there. I'm working on a budget proposal to replace the antiquated old juvenile court and probation statistical system. And the idea behind getting better data is to have better capacity to measure outcomes. So that's all. It's just work that lies ahead.
Thanks, David.
anything further from the board? Any questions of Executive Director Howard? Seeing none, we'll move to the legal update.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I think Katie already took part of my update away, which is the delegation of authority issue. At the last board meeting, I suggested it was going to be at this board meeting that we would take action on that. We're currently working with the Attorney General's office and the State Public Works Board just to work on that delegation a little bit more, and so it'll be available at the July meeting. Quick update or non-update on the Burn Jag litigation. It's progressing slowly at this point. The next scheduled hearing for the State of California versus Sessions won't be happening until September. Discovery is currently ongoing in that case, and we are participating in providing some relevant documents. The other major litigation involving related to the Burn Jag, which is the United States versus California, that is on for hearing in June 20th in the Eastern District of California, and we may get some more additional updated information on that at that time that we'll report at the July meeting. And then finally on Burn Jag litigation, I wanted to provide a quick update. Yesterday, U.S. District Court in Pennsylvania recently also found unconstitutional the access and notification conditions, as well as finding that 8 U.S.C. 1373 in and of itself, that condition was unconstitutional to be added to the Burn Jag litigation, and as well found that 8 U.S.C. 1373 is just unconstitutional as applied as well. It's a broader finding than other courts have found so far, and that I'm sure will be appealed by the United States government. But again, it's another indication that the conditions that were attached to the Burn Jag funding were not lawful, and we'll see how that plays out with California. And with that, I think that's my legal update.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the legal update? Seeing none, I will turn to the consent agenda on our consent items on our agenda and ask anyone who wishes to make any public comment about these items or any item on the meeting to see Tracy regarding filling out a speaker's card, and ask if anybody would like to pull a consent agenda for consideration in the open board meeting. Seeing none, anyone from the audience wish to pull an item from the agenda? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second. First and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Now moving on to discussion items. Item C. Here comes Colleen. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And before we begin that discussion item, Madam Chair, I've noticed there's some money that would be going to the Kern County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you for that.
Madam Supervisor, you're not required to recuse yourself. It is a non-issue. It's a 1091.5. You don't have to leave the room if you don't want to. But whether or not you want to vote on that item, I leave to your discretion.
I probably will recuse myself.
Okay.
Thank you, and I'm gonna step out.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't know if she was thanking you for the money or because of a recusal.
Very grateful for the money.
There you go.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Colleen Stoner, Field Representative, and I'm presenting Agenda Item C. This is an action item requesting the approval of funding recommendations made by the Executive Steering Committee for the Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Program, which we'll refer to as RSAT going forward. The recommendations are to fully fund the three highest ranked proposals, totaling an amount of $835,535, and partially fund a fourth with the balance remaining of $106,574 for a total award amount of $942,109. Additionally, the Executive Steering Committee recommended that the fourth project be fully funded if the BSCC receives a sufficient increase in the 2018-19 federal RSAT award. As you're aware, the Board of State Community Corrections is the designated state administrative agency for the RSAT program. It's federally funded through the BJA, Bureau of Justice Assistance. The RSAT program was designed to provide funding to break the cycle of drugs and violence by reducing the demand for use and trafficking of illegal drugs. RSAT enhances the capability of states and units of local and tribal government to provide in-custody substance use disorder treatment to inmates, prepare offenders for reintegration into the community through a reentry process that involves community-based organizations and other broad-based aftercare. Successful applicants will be funded for a 3-year cycle. As I mentioned, a total of $942,109 in federal RSAT funding is available for the first year, which will begin on July 1st, 2018. Then a non-competitive request for application for continuation funding will be issued for the second and third years, contingent upon the amount and availability of federal dollars. A 25% match at the local level is required of the recipients, and that can be in kind or match required. In kind or cash. At the September 14th, 2017 board meeting, the board approved the use of the funding for this grant project and authorized an executive steering committee to be established to oversee the development of a request for proposal process. The board appointed Sheriff Dean Grouden as the chair and authorized the chair to work with staff to name the members. You can see attachment C for a list of those executive steering committee members. I want to thank Sheriff Grouden for his leadership on this project, as well as the contributions of the other members of the steering committee. This is Sheriff Ground's third tour of duty on this committee, having led 2 previous executive steering committees in 2013, 2015, and then finally this last round of funding for the 2018 grantees. The request for proposals was approved for release by the board at the February 8th, 2018 board meeting and issued to the field on February 9th. The request for proposals is part of your board packet and is attachment C4. The key elements identified by the executive committee was that each applicant would be allowed to request up to a maximum of $314,046. Only local jail detention facilities were allowed to apply, and only one detention facility within a county was allowed to submit a proposal. Applicants were to be able to provide jail-based substance use disorder treatment programs that included aftercare. The in-custody component for the participants must be at least 3 months in length and no more than 12. And to the extent possible, separate the participants from the general correctional population. The programs are to deliver evidence-based services that focus on cognitive, behavioral, social, vocational, and other skills to solve substance use disorder and related problems. Participants are to be provided an opportunity for successful reintegration that involves post-release referrals for appropriate community-based aftercare. And aftercare is to be offered for up to 1 year. The BSCC received 6 proposals totaling $1,777,657 for the grant program, which was forwarded to the Executive Steering Committee for reading and rating. On April 25th, the Executive Steering Committee received training by the research staff here at the board, and they read and rated the proposals based on the criteria that was established in the RFP. On May 17th, the Executive Steering Committee met and discussed the scores to develop the funding recommendation. A list of the ranked proposals and a summary of the 4 programs recommended for funding is provided in attachments C2 and C3. At this time, on behalf of the RSAP project Executive Steering Committee, the staff recommends approval of the proposed grant awards. To approve the Executive Steering Committee's proposed list of sheriff's offices reflected on attachment C2, to receive a total of $942,109 in fiscal year 2018, and fund on a non-competitive basis for up to 2 years if the federal appropriation continues in the RSAC grant program and the grant is making measurable progress towards stated goals. Also, to fund, or fully fund rather, the Santa Cruz County RSAP project if the BSCC receives sufficient increase in the 2018-19 federal RSAT award, and to authorize staff to accept relinquished awards and offer conditional awards to eligible applicants in line on the ranked order list if an applicant is unable to accept the conditional grant award. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
does gender responsive just mean directed towards the female inmates in the Santa Cruz proposal?
Yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Any public comment or questions? Seeing none, anything more from the board? Now, first, let me thank you, Colleen, for all your hard work, and Sheriff Grodd, again, for all your hard work. I do have one question, which is how hopeful are you for additional funds?
I'm sorry, could you say that?
The additional funds that you suggest may come in, is there?
Yes, we are hopeful. As we're understanding it, the federal appropriations nearly double. I don't know how that will fall out for California or the other states exactly, but it looks like there should be a good increase. But we won't know until we see it.
Looking to the board for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, let the record reflect that Leticia Perez is out of the room, and motion carries. Yes, you may.
So I want to real quick thank Colleen and Tony Jackson both for their hard work on this project. Obviously, it's not a lot of money, but it is a good cause and there's a lot of need out there. Also, the ESE members, it was a great group of people, very knowledgeable. And part of the reason I do this is because I learn something new every time. And this time we learned a lot about medication-assisted treatment. I had no idea it was so complex, but can bring real value to these programs. So again, thanks primarily, Colleen, Tony, and the ESE members. And thanks to the board for approving that recommendation.
Moving on to item D of the agenda, and because I always like to make a big deal of everything at the BSCC, this is Michael Short. It's his first presentation before the board. We'd like to all welcome him. I'd like you to stare intently at him during every word of his presentation in an effort to make him as nervous as possible. And certainly think of a number of questions done that we can ask.
That I can
Welcome,
reflect
Mike.
appropriately to the people that can answer. I'm going to try to set a record for brevity this morning with my presentation. But good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Mike Shores. I'm field representative in the County Facility Constructions Division. Agenda item D requests the board approve Yolo County's request for a scope change to its Assembly Bill 900 Phase 2 jail project. Originally, Yolo County developed a scope that included visitation for inmates that was limited to video conferencing and did not include in-person visitation. After further consideration and research, Yolo County is seeking to change their scope to renovate and expand existing space to allow for both in-person and video visitation. Staff recommends the board approve Yolo County's AB 900 Phase 2 scope change as submitted. Thank you.
Don't leave. Any questions or comments?
I do, Chair Penner. Thank you. Oh, so what is the thinking behind the change? Is this, how did it happen, and sort of what's the methodology in changing and expanding this particular? And I mean, I understand the arguments from the 30,000-foot view, so we don't have to get into all that. But what happened with this particular entity and its evolution? I'm just curious.
Well, I think from a programmatic standpoint, there's a recognition that in-person visitation has best practices behind all of that. I don't think you're looking for sort of the impetus as to what caused Yolo County to make their change. But I do think that after some conversations, there's really some recognition that there's been that in-person visitation would be of value.
I see. I know that this is a complicated conversation, and some places have capacity that others don't. And I'm wanting to learn more about, how to find the balance with our, public safety officials, obviously. But this is interesting, and I think of note, and I appreciate your work on it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think I'd like to interject as well, Madam Chair, just to clarify. We did send a letter to Yolo County following the passage of the budget trailer language dealing with the requirements that counties could not move away from in-person visitation going forward. And Yolo County was in the uncomfortable process of, even though their project was approved and was going forward without in-person visitation, part of their project was unusual in as much as the project was both demolishing their in-person visitation as well as constructing video visitation only. We expressed some concerns about whether or not that was in compliance with the law. And rather than argue back and forth quite a bit and bring many more lawyers involved into that discussion, I think Yolo County also found the wisdom to change the scope of their project.
Okay.
Question?
Yes.
Not really even specific to Yolo. I noticed we had Sacramento doing a scope change on consent. And this was, what's the logic behind one scope change being consent and one being a presentation? Am I missing something?
No, I'm happy to take that. Well, you want to go ahead?
We actually chatted about, go ahead.
Yeah, that's sort of, when we build the agendas, it's sort of the discretion of staff to decide which items are going to merit conversation, which items don't merit conversation. And in particular, because of, and in fact, we discussed this item briefly as part of the legal update at the last board meeting with respect to the sensitivities around the visitation issue. We thought it best that it be a discussion item rather than a consent item.
Agreed. It was highly sensitive. I actually made a call to Terry Vernon in Yolo, and he was very receptive to basically being in this sort of new position in terms of the legislation, the regulations that were passed. They were receptive and happy to move forward doing this, and we thought it should come to the attention of the board because it may be one of those that you're asked about as a board member as we move forward.
Make a motion to approve.
Hold that motion. Any public comment on this issue? Seeing none, we have a motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Michael, before you leave, just because putting you on the spot feels so right, you have a great career. You can tell the board a little about yourself and where you came from. It's great to have you.
Sure. As you know, my name is Mike Shores. I recently came to BSCC after a 27-year career with Sacramento County Probation Department, where I guess retired as the Assistant Chief Probation Officer in January 5th, 6th. I have a huge amount of passion for the juvenile justice system, where I spend probably the bulk of my time and my work doing a lot of juvenile justice sort of reform, I think, in Sacramento County. There's a lot of work that the Sacramento County Probation Department has done over the years that I'm incredibly proud to have been part of, and I think an instrumental piece of trying to shift culture and do some other work there. So I'm eager to continue my work in that arena when I get an opportunity to do so. I'll be doing some work around evidence-based practices, I think, with some of the strategic planning. So that, along with this construction work, gives me an opportunity to have some input into how facilities are being built, and so I'm excited. It's been great. It's been a good change.
Great. I just think it's an illustration of the high-level professionals that come to our organization after a very, very successful career. We're really excited to have you. And to the rest of the staff, you were there at that high level and you just continued on. But we're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Did a plan together?
Well, I have the box from Maria.
Wow. Welcome.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm quick on my feet. And Helene come forward. Helene was tardy this morning. Unlike Chief Bejarano, she had an excuse. Oh, my internal voice got out of me. She had an award ceremony, so welcome and great to have you.
Thank you, and just, one of those proud mom moments, my daughter got all A's and B's over the last 4 years in elementary school. Anyway, so now I'm here. So good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Helene Zentner. I'm a field representative with the Corrections Programs and Grant Program Division, and I'm here to present item E on behalf of the Proud Parenting Grant Program. I have to excuse it, there is a lot of alliteration in my talking points, and I didn't realize that until I was reading it out loud this morning waiting for my daughter. So anyway, this agenda item requests the approval of several recommendations developed by the Executive Steering Committee. These recommendations are to fully fund the 8 top ranked proposals provided to you in attachment E2, totaling $826,974 for projects providing parenting services to young or expectant parents previously involved with the justice system and or crossover youth within the child welfare system. Number 2, accept the ESC's recommendations that after fully funding the top 8 ranked applications, that the balance of $8,026 be distributed to the 3 proposals recommended for funding that did not request the full maximum amount in the RFP. And that amount was $104,375. This includes allowing staff to adjust their budget tables and their scope of work if necessary. Those 3 proposals are Encompass Community Services at an additional $7,186. Tulare County Office of Education, an additional $465. And Fathers and Families of San Joaquin at an additional $375. And then finally, to authorize staff to offer a conditional award to any applicants next in line on the rank ordered list if an applicant does not accept the conditional grant award. So as a little bit of background, almost to the day today, last year on June 8th, 2017, this body began the application and award process for the Proud Parenting Grant Program by approving the establishment of an ESC and the draft outline or timeline, for the grants request for proposals process. The board appointed board member and chief probation officer, Michael Ortola, as chair and delegated authority to him to establish the executive steering committee for the Proud Parenting Grant. Members are listed for you in attachment E1. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Chief Ortola, both personally and on behalf of the BSCC, for giving his time and his guidance and expertise during the entire process. And additionally, I'd like to thank those ESC members who served during this time. And usually Israel is here, and he is not today, but Israel via from Milpa is usually here also. As a reminder, the Proud Parenting Grant Program serves young parents and or expectant parents between the ages of 14 and 25 that were involved in the justice system and or crossover youth within the child welfare system. Historically, the annual funding for this program has been set at $835,000 within the State Budget Act. Should the board approve the funding recommendations developed by the ESC, monies for this 3-year grant cycle of this program will come from the 2018, 2019, and 2020 Budget Acts. Over the last year, the following timeline has occurred. November 1st, 2017, the ESC met for the first time to develop the RFP and the rating criteria. A few elements of that RFP were that eligible applicants considered for grant award were county probation departments, county offices of education, and nonprofit community-based organizations. And I'd like to point that out in that that is a more expansive eligibility list than we have had in prior Proud Parenting grants. And it would, the ESC felt that it would expand the eligibility so that it would broaden service elements provided to those youth being served and would provide for a more concerted effort in partnering with collaborating and other local agencies. And then finally, there was a 10% in-kind match requirement for all grant funds requested. In February of this year, the board approved the release of the RFP, and that document is provided to you as attachment E4. In March, the BSCC conducted a bidders conference to answer any questions that potential applicants had about the Proud Parenting Program, the RFP, and the BSCC's administrative grant processes. This workshop was also live streamed for those agencies who were not able to attend. And by March 30th, the BSCC had received a total of 31 applications comprised of 5 probation departments, 4 county offices of education, and 22 community-based organizations. On April 11th, the ESC members were trained on how to read and rate the proposals based on the criteria that was previously established within the RFP. And lastly, all 31 proposals were read and rated by the members of the ESC, and funding recommendations were finalized at their May 22nd meeting. And those recommendations are provided to you in attachment E2. To briefly mention, as part of the RFP, the ESC determined a minimum scoring threshold. That is, proposals that did not score at least 65% of the total 240 points in the rating scale would not be considered eligible for funding. And there were 9 proposals that did not meet that threshold. On behalf of the Proud Parenting Grant Program, ESC, I'm seeking the board's approval for the 3 components of the recommendation, which again were to fully fund the 8 top-ranked proposals that were available to you in E2 and up on the screen, totaling $826,794. To accept the ESC's recommendation that after fully funding those 8 top-ranked applications, that the balance of the $8,026 be distributed to the 3 proposals that did not request the maximum amount in the RFP of $374,000. And to authorize staff to offer a conditional award to the applicants next in line on the rank ordered list should any applicant not accept the conditional award. Thank you, and is there any questions, or are there any questions?
There is one comment before we go forward. Chief Bejarano sits on the South Bay Community Services Board of Directors, and they are recommended for a award. I think it's fine that he's in the room if he just does not vote on the matter, or should we kick him out now?
Let's kick him out now.
Okay. All right, moving forward, we
Madam
have.
Chair.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's just a very hyper-technical issue. In terms of moving the staff recommendation, I would just ask, which appears at the end of the board report, I would just add a request that we add an additional motion that and this is part of the board report, but it didn't quite make it into the staff recommendation, that subject to annual appropriation, the recommended grantees would continue to be funded in 2018, 2019, and 2020, subject to appropriation, so we don't have to bring this item back to the board, assuming that appropriation happens in the annual budget acts.
Okay. Certainly, I agree with that. So we have the recommendation with an addendum of council's recommendation. I've asked the board if they have any questions.
Okay, if I comment, just.
Yes.
Thank you. Although not, relatively speaking, not a lot of money, I think the executive steering committee was actually a very diverse, knowledgeable group. I enjoyed working with all of them. Also, I want to thank you, Ashley. I don't think she's here right now, the analyst. She was very, very helpful. And then a special thanks to Helene for not only her knowledge and her guidance, but also her sense of humor through the whole process. So, great process.
Great. Right. Anything from the audience on this item? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion and a second.
Well done.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The abstention is on the record. Chief Bejarano is out of the room for the vote, and motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Now, this is surprising, but I believe we have made the journey to the end of the agenda. I would now ask if anybody in the public would like to come forward and comment on any item. Any final comments by any members of the board before we adjourn? Would you like to welcome back Chief Bejarano?
Just two things. Number one, I have a Tide stick and you can't keep your
Issues.
I was curious, I noticed there's a bill going through to build police stations and that BSCC would be responsible to administer the grant. Kind of something out of our, I would hope that if we get stuck with doing that, there'll be, sufficient funding for us to take care of it.
Oftentimes, Sheriff Dean, there will be just pass-through grants where we have absolutely ministerial responsibilities only, basically, to be the agency that cuts the check. And different things have come up in various past budgets, including funding for police stations. Aaron could probably provide some other examples, but that's just basically using our agency to move the funding through and out to the locals. So there's no additional work for us.
So when it says administered grant,
It's not a grant like you're used to. It's just handing the money out to the specified agency.
all right, thank you.
And that bill did die, yeah.
Thanks.
The chances are highly unlikely now that that is dead, but, okay, all right. Thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned.
Graduation time.
Graduation.